The trade lane above the moon of Varos looked calm from a distance. But every human captain knew it was one of the worst places in the outer sectors. Ships slowed there not because they wanted to, but because a giant alien customs platform sat in the center of the route like a metal beast waiting to feed every ship that passed had to pay. The fee was called legal transit balance by the alien councils, but the humans had another word for it: extortion. Captain Elias Vorn stood on the bridge of the human cargo ship Resolute Dawn and watched the giant station grow larger on the front screen. The bridge was silent except for the low hum of engines and the nervous tapping of Officer Mara's fingers over the sensor panel. The Resolute Dawn was not a warship. It was old, scarred, heavy in the middle, and patched in more places than anyone wanted to count. It carried food parts, medicine, and hard metal tools to human colonies too far from Earth to build everything for themselves. It was the kind of ship that kept people alive, and today it was almost empty because the last two checkpoints had taken so much in fees that the voyage had nearly become useless. Mara swallowed and looked back at Elias. Captain, they have sent the notice. She pushed the message onto the main screen. Payment required transit fee increased by 40%. Failure to comply will be treated as hostile refusal. A low curse came from the engine liaison at the back of the bridge. 40% more, said Aaron, the shipmaster. They raised it last week. They raise it every week, Mara said quietly, because they can. Elias did not answer. At first he stared at the message and then out at the station again. The alien platform was ring-shaped with long weapon arms extending from the sides and thousands of windows lit like cold stars. Small patrol ships moved around it like insects around a carcass. To most captains, that view meant one thing: pay fast and keep moving. But something in Elias had been wearing thin for years. He had watched human freighters turned away because they could not pay. He had seen supply ships delayed until medicine spoiled. He had heard about frontier families rationing water because the transport fees made delivery too costly. Every human captain complained about the system in private. None of them challenged it in public because the Alien Alliance controlled the routes, and the Alliance had warships enough to bury any one ship that spoke too loudly. Captain Mara said more softly, "We can still make the colony run if we pay this one. Maybe not the next, but this one." Yes, that was true. If they handed over the reserve account, the Resolute Dawn could pass. They would arrive poor but alive, and then on the return trip they would face another fee, another delay, another insult. Elias looked around the bridge at his crew. They were good people, tired people, human people, not soldiers. They were waiting for the order they expected: transfer the credits, keep the heads down, survive one more day instead. Elias asked a different question: how many human ships are holding in the queue? Mara blinked at him, then checked her panel. 12 within signal range, maybe more behind the moon shadow, all waiting to pay, all waiting to bow. Elias stepped forward and rested both hands on the command rail. His face stayed calm, but his eyes grew hard, open, ship-wide. Channel, he said. Mara turned in surprise. Captain, ship-wide and local lane. He repeated. She obeyed. A soft tone spread through the bridge and across the old cargo ship. All stations open. This is Captain Elias Vorn speaking. His voice was steady, almost too steady. The crew listened. Other ships in the lane listened too. For 16 years we have paid these fees because we were told there was no choice. He said we were told it was temporary, then necessary, then lawful, then normal. We were told that if we stayed quiet things would improve. They did not improve. They worsened. He let the words settle. Mara could feel it. Something unusual was happening. Engine room came on the line first. "We hear you, Captain. Cargo hold next. Listening. Medical bay." "Go ahead." Captain Elias drew a breath. "Today, the station raised the fee again, while human colonies behind this route are short on power cells and antibiotics. Today, they ask us to choose between feeding our people and feeding their greed. Today, I am done choosing them." No one moved. Even the ship seemed to hold still. Aaron stared at him from across the bridge. "Captain, what are you saying?" Elias turned toward the weapons console that normally stayed dark because the Resolute Dawn was listed as a civilian hauler power. The shield relays to full. Aaron's mouth opened. "Captain, power them." Aaron obeyed. Deep in the ship, ancient systems woke with a rising growl. Mara looked at her panel in shock. "Captain, the station is scanning us harder." "Good," Elias said. "Let them." Another officer whispered. Sir, if we do not pay, they will tag us hostile. Elias nodded, then let them tell the truth. For once, a new message flashed onto the screen. Final warning, submit fee. Immediately, Elias spoke to the open local channel. To every human ship in this lane, this is Captain Elias Vorn of the Resolute Dawn. You do not know me, and I do not ask you to follow me, but hear this. They are not charging us because they need these credits. They are charging us because we let them. If one ship refuses, they crush it. If every ship refuses, they have a problem. Silence answered him. Somewhere in the queue, a human pilot cut the channel at once. Another stayed on but said nothing. Fear lived in that silence. Fear and shame. The station weapons began to rotate. Mara's voice tightened. Captain, target locks across our bow. Elias gave his next order without changing expression. Disable the payment transfer array. Done, said Aaron. After a moment, Mara turned pale. Captain, they will see that as refusal. Yes, Elias said. Then, arm package Black Iron. Aaron froze. That was not in any public ship record package. Black Iron was a sealed upgrade hidden in cargo schematics under false maintenance tags. Smugglers use secret compartments. Frontier captains use secret guns. The Resolute Dawn had both. Captain Aaron said very carefully, if I arm Black Iron, there is no step back. Elias finally looked at him. There was no step back. 3 checkpoints ago. Arm it. Lights shifted red along the lower consoles as hidden systems came alive. Panels opened beneath the hull. Tracking software woke from years of silence. Heat moved through the ship like blood through a clenched fist. Mara stared at the tactical overlay in disbelief. Missile tubes, rail lances jamming spikes. Where did all this come from? Elias gave the smallest grim smile. From years of being robbed, the station hailed them directly. The alien face on screen was narrow, silver-skinned, and cold-eyed. I am Controller Severan of Transit Authority. 7. You are in illegal weapons posture. Power down and submit payment immediately, or your vessel will be destroyed. Elias stepped to the screen. Controller Severan, this vessel carries medical cargo for human colonies. Your new fee is unjust and will not be paid. The alien blinked once, as if surprised. A human had dared to say it aloud. Then you choose death. No, Elias said, you chose this the moment you mistook patience for surrender. The screen went dark. Mara looked up. Captain, station cannons charging on the local human band. Someone finally spoke. It was another captain. Old voice shaking. Elias, what are you doing? What should have been done years ago, he answered. He cut the channel and settled into the command chair. For one heartbeat, the bridge stayed frozen in total silence. Then the first blast came from the station, bright blue and deadly, tearing across the dark toward the Resolute Dawn. Mara shouted. Incoming. Elias did not flinch. Helm, break port. Now the old cargo ship lurched so hard that Aaron slammed into his console. The beam missed by less than a ship length and lit the side of space with white fire gases filled the bridge. The station had fired to kill, and now nobody on the Resolute Dawn had any doubt left. Elias rose halfway from his chair and gave the order that would change the route, the sector, and maybe far more than that. Return fire. The Resolute Dawn rolled hard under the second blast, and old alarms screamed through the hull. What had once been a slow cargo ship now moved with sudden violent purpose because Elias had spent 6 years hiding engine modifications inside legal repair work. The Alliance believed human cargo captains were soft. The Alliance had never bothered to learn what desperate men could build in the dark corners of space. Aaron fired the first rail lance. The shot tore from a hidden bellyport and struck one of the station's outer sensor towers. Metal exploded into bright fragments for a second. Every screen on the bridge filled with static. Direct hit, Mara shouted. The bridge crew stared in shock. They had damaged it. The station was not untouchable. Captain? Another lock, Mara said. 3 patrol cutters leaving the ring. Elias nodded, jamming spikes. First, then starboard missiles. Make them think we only prepared for escape. Aaron's hands moved fast over the weapons board. Small black cylinders launched from the hull and burst into clouds of false signal. The patrol cutters split formation at once, tracking ghost ships that did not exist. Then the first missile volley hit one cutter, vanished in a bloom of white fire. A second spun out of line, trailing plasma. The third broke wide and tried to circle for the Resolute Dawn's engine's helm. Keep us moving, Elias said. Never give the station a straight line. The pilot Lena answered with a hard yes, Captain, and shoved the ship into a deep roll. Cargo containers rattled in their locks. Lights flashed metal. Groaned it felt less like flying and more like surviving inside a falling building. On the civilian Q channel, voices erupted. Did that human ship just fire? The station is hit. What is happening? Cut your signals. They will punish all of us. One frightened voice shouted at Elias to stop before more humans died. Another voice said nothing at all, but remained on channel listening. Mara watched the Q telemetry, Captain. None of them are moving forward to pay. They are all holding position. Good, Elias said. Let them watch the station. Send a wideband declaration across the lane. Human vessel Resolute Dawn has entered. Armed rebellion. All traffic remain clear. Assisting this vessel will be considered an act of war against the Alliance Transit Council. There it was. War, the word hung in the bridge air thicker than smoke. Crew members exchanged looks, but no one asked to surrender. They had seen the station fire first. They had heard the threat for years, and now that the truth was open, none of them could hide from it. Captain Mara said quietly, Station Shield is strengthening around the core hub. They are trying to protect the payment center. Of course they are. Elias said it matters more to them than the people starving behind it. He stood and pointed at the tactical projection. The station ring had weak points where cargo clamps met the power spine. Civilian captains learned structure the way soldiers learned armor because cargo men survived by knowing where things might fail. Target the lower rotation arm. If we break that, the hub cannot pivot its main guns cleanly. Aaron frowned. That angle is narrow. Elias answered without hesitation. Then make it count. The third patrol cutter rushed in from below, trying to rake their engines. Lena dropped the ship so hard Mara nearly bit her tongue. Fire. Aft burst. Now Elias ordered hidden cannons under the stern. Barked 3 times. The cutter took one shot through the cockpit and broke apart into spinning shards. For a heartbeat, the bridge crew cheered before another station blast slammed against the shields and threw everyone back into reality. Shield loss to 60%. Mara said, breathing hard. Another 2 hits. Like that, and we are open. Elias kept his eyes on the station. One more. Pass. The Resolute Dawn came around the ring in a tight arc. Aaron aligned the rail lance. His hands shook once, then steadied firing. The shot crossed the gap like a spear of sunlight and hit the lower rotation arm exactly where Elias had called it. The massive structure cracked, then burst apart in a shower of burning plates. One entire weapon bank on the station sagged out of position. The lane channel exploded with stunned voices. He crippled the platform. A cargo ship crippled the platform by the stars. Marabra whispered almost to herself, they really can bleed. The station did not reply with words this time. It replied with everything. Dozens of drone fighters poured from internal bays. More cutters lifted from hidden racks. The ring lit with charging energy on every side. Captain Lena said, if they all come at once, we will not outfly. This Elias knew it too. One ship could wound the system. One ship could not defeat the whole net alone unless something changed. He opened the local human channel again. You all saw it. He said they can be hit. They can be broken. You have paid them because you believe resistance was suicide. Look at that station. Now, look carefully. Through the front display, human captains could see burning sections of the outer ring drifting into space. They were seeing something forbidden, alien weakness. Elias continued, I am not asking you to die for me. I am asking you to stop feeding the hand that closes around your throat. If you are armed, then stand. If you are unarmed, then run the story to every route and colony you know. Tell them a cargo ship struck back and lived for a few seconds. No answer came. Then one new signal appeared on the Q-board merchant vessel. Iron Faith shifting power from cargo winches to defense grid. Another followed. Freighter Halcyon Gate, unlocking restricted compartment. Then a third salvage tug. Bitter light deploying drone cutters. Mara stared at the board with wide eyes. Captain, 3 human ships are powering weapons. Then 5, then 7. Not all of them had real weapons. Some had mining lasers. Some had shield boosters. Some only had engines fast enough to ram and courage, big enough to make the thought real, but fear was breaking. That mattered more than firepower. Controller Severin hailed again, face twisted now with anger. Rather than cold control, humans cease immediately. This is your final order. Continue, and every colony in this sector will lose Alliance protection. Elias leaned toward the screen. Protection you call, theft protection you call, hunger order. You mistake silence for loyalty and fear for respect that ends today. He cut the signal before the alien could answer. Mara looked from the board to him, Captain Elias. Relay traffic is surging. They're calling reinforcements from 2 nearby sectors, maybe 3. Then we make this moment impossible to hide, Elias said. He stood taller than before, though the bridge shook around him. Record all feeds, every station, shot every fee demand, every threat. Send copies on burst transmission to every human world, every independent port, every news broker who will take it. Mara's fear turned into fierce focus. Sending now. The first human escort charge began, almost by accident. The Iron Faith moved from the queue and took a station beam meant for the bitter light. Then the Halcyon Gate fired its mining lasers into a damaged sensor cluster. Then the tug released drones that swarmed like insects over exposed armor seams. The Alliance had ruled so long, it had forgotten the danger of pushing ordinary people beyond their last point of patience. The bridge of the Resolute Dawn erupted in motion again. As new enemies closed, Captain Mara said a heavy destroyer is dropping from warp above the moon's shadow. The screen shifted. A long dark warship entered the battle space like a blade sliding from black water. It was far larger than anything human traders could handle. The cheering on the human band died at once. Elias looked at it and knew the truth. This was no longer a dispute over fees. This was a test. If the humans broke, now the system would become harsher than ever. If they held even for a little while, the galaxy would never forget that human captains had dared to say no. The destroyer angled toward the Resolute Dawn and opened its forward batteries. Mara's voice dropped almost to a whisper. Captain Elias sat down slowly in the command chair and locked his eyes on the approaching warship. "Bring us about," he said. "We are not done." The destroyer was called Lawful Measure, and even its name felt like an insult. Its hull was long, dark, and clean, without a single sign of age or repair, unlike the human ships in the lane that wore every year of labor on their metal skin. The Alliance loved polished power. Humans trusted past endurance. Captain Elias Vorn studied the incoming warship and knew he could not defeat it in open battle, not with one cargo ship, not with failing shields, not with a bridge crew made up of traders, mechanics, and tired civilians. So he did what humans had always done when the galaxy expected them to kneel. He thought differently. Status, he asked. Mara answered at once. Destroyer weapons charging our shields at 51%. Black iron reserves, low on missiles. Rail lances still good for 4 high-power shots. Aaron added engine heat climbing. We push harder, and something may melt. Elias nodded once. On the local band, the human ships were no longer silent watchers. They were talking over each other, fast, scared, and alive. What do we do? That destroyer will wipe us all. Fall back to the moon's shadow. No. If we scatter, they pick us off. Captain Vorn, say something. Elias opened the channel. Listen carefully. Do not form one group. That is what they expect. Move in small pairs. Make them choose targets. Hit sensors and weapon tracking, not armor. We do not need to kill their ships. We need to blind and confuse them. One captain asked, "Where did you learn this?" Elias answered while still watching the tactical screen. "From paying attention while they robbed us." A few nervous laughs broke through the fear. Sometimes that was enough to keep people steady. The Lawful Measure fired first. A spread of precision beams lanced across the field, not at Elias, but at the smaller human ships trying to regroup. It was meant as a lesson. One trader transport lost a shield panel and spun away, trailing vapor. Another ship barely escaped by cutting thrust and dropping beneath wreckage from the damaged station arm. They are targeting the weak first. Mara said, "Of course." Elias replied, "Bullies always do." Helm, take us between the destroyer and the station debris field, close enough to make their gunners nervous. Lena obeyed instantly. The Resolute Dawn plunged toward the broken edge of the station ring, where molten metal and torn plates drifted in slow, dangerous clouds. To a cleaner pilot, it was madness. To a frontier captain, it was cover. The destroyer followed, but cautiously. Its commanders did not want their proud warship scratched by wreckage. From a customs platform, that caution gave Elias room. Aaron load. A rail shot, not for the destroyer, for the debris cluster. At bearing 2-1, Aaron looked confused, but did not argue. Loaded fire. The rail lance hit a heavy section of the station arm and shattered it into a storm of spinning metal. The destroyer's point defense lit up at once, tracking hundreds of new objects for 3 seconds. Their forward batteries lost clean. Locket was not much, but human fights were often won on scraps of time. Now Elias snapped. 3 human ships burst from different angles and hit the destroyer, with everything they had, mining beams, old missiles, salvage drones, rigged to explode. None of it broke the warship's armor, but it struck the center blisters along the upper spine, exactly where Elias had told him to aim. Mara almost smiled. They listened more than listened. Elias said they learned. The lawful measure swung its nose hard and vaporized one drone cloud, and a second later blew apart the cargo pods of the merchant ship, Iron Faith. Yet the human ship itself lived and rolled away behind wreckage while cursing so loudly on open channel that even Mara laughed once despite the battle. Then a new voice entered the band. This was Captain Soji of the Freightrunner Ember Trace. We intercepted your burst transmission from 2 lanes over. What in hell is happening? Mara checked telemetry and looked up in disbelief. Captain, more human ships are coming. Not Alliance-registered independent haulers and escorts. Elias kept his focus. Tell them the truth. Tell them fees and today are humans. She sent the message outside the battle widened, not into a neat war line the Alliance would understand, but into a rough, ugly swarm of human ships darting in and out of debris shadows, firing whenever they found a weak angle and vanishing before a return shot could land. They were not fighting like a navy. They were fighting like people who had spent their lives making impossible routes work with failing parts and bad odds. The station itself still lived, though burning in several places, and now it began broadcasting across the sector all human shipping to be suspended, all human cargo to be inspected, all disputed colonial claims frozen. Any resistance will result in seizure of assets and revocation of route rights. Mara stared at the message in disbelief. They are punishing every human world for this. Elias felt the last of his doubt burn away. Good, he said. She turned to him. Good now. Everyone knows exactly what they are. The bridge fell quiet for half a second, as the meaning settled in this. Was not just about one captain or one station anymore. The Alliance had shown its hand too clearly to hide it now. The fee system was never about balance or law, it was about control. And once ordinary people saw the control clearly, something dangerous happened. They stopped respecting it. Mara's console flashed with incoming data from the burst transmissions. Captain responses from human colonies, anger, protests, emergency assemblies. Port unions are already calling for route shutdowns. Some local defense groups are mobilizing. Aaron let out a slow breath. This is spreading. It has to, Elias said. Otherwise we die for nothing. A violent impact rocked the ship. Warning lights burst across the bridge stern. Shield collapse, engine section damage. Heat spike in reactor relay. Lena shouted. Destroyer clipped us on the last pass report. Elias snapped. Aaron checked rapidly. We lost port maneuver trim and 2 missile bays. Engine still answers, but not for long. The lawful measure was adapting. Its commander had stopped trying to swat many targets and instead began forcing the humans toward kill zones between station debris and open space. Slowly, the human swarm was being compressed. Elias saw the trap forming and knew they needed something bigger than survival. Now they needed a symbol, something every human ship, every colony child, every tired worker would remember when the Alliance later claimed the rebellion had only been piracy. The payment core. It still glowed at the center of the damaged station hub, protected by strengthening shields and automatic defense guns. Destroy that, and the route would not just be fought over, it would be broken open. Mara followed his gaze. Captain, no, that core is buried behind 3 shield layers, and the destroyer will know what we are doing. Yes, Elias said, which is why everyone else keeps the destroyer busy. He opened the band again. All human ships, this is Vorn new target priority. The station payment core. If it falls, this route falls with it. Harass the destroyer, draw its eyes. Give me one clear run. Someone answered at once. You're asking a lot? Captain Elias replied. They have taken a lot for a moment. Silence then, voice after voice came back. Understood, copy that we are in. Let us make it count. The human swarm changed shape. 2 ships dove straight at the destroyer's port side. 3 more cut under its stern and dumped heat flares and decoy drones. The Iron Faith, which should have fled, instead rammed a piece of wreckage into the destroyer's firing lane and forced it to roll wide. They were risking everything for one opening. Mara watched with bright, tense eyes. Captain, you have your run, 12 seconds. Maybe less. Elias looked to Lena. Can she do it? Lena gave a thin, grim smile. She was old before they sold her to us. She was stubborn before we fixed her. And today she is angry. That was good enough. Take us in the resolute Dawn surged forward straight toward the heart of the burning station, while the destroyer turned behind them with fresh fury alarms screamed. Guns flashed. Metal debris scraped along their shields like claws. Aaron whispered to the rail console as though it were alive. "Come on, old girl, one more perfect shot." Mara's voice rose over the Chaos outer shield blare, weakening defense guns turning. Destroyer has clear vector in 7 seconds. Elias did not blink, hold steady. The payment core filled the front screen, a bright silver sphere, wrapped in shield light and ringed by armored struts. To most captains, it looked impossible to hit. To Elias, it looked like the lock on a prison door fire. He said Aaron fired the last high-power rail lance left the resolute Dawn and crossed the dark like judgment. The rail shot struck the payment core shield, and for one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the shield rippled inward. Like water punched by a giant fist, one of the outer layers collapsed. Mara shouted first layer down, but 2 still remained, and the lawful measure was coming fast. From behind, Captain Lena said, "We do not have time for another clean pass." Elias knew it. The destroyer had seen the real threat now, and all its attention swung toward the resolute Dawn. That alone was victory of a kind, because while it hunted one ship, dozens of other human captains were still free to strike at the rout. But Elias had not come this far to wound the system and leave its heart-beating status on rail lances. He asked. Aaron answered with frustration in his voice, "High power empty. I can charge a standard shot, but it will not punch 2 shields. And armor then. We take the shields down another way." Elias said. Mara looked at the tactical map. Defense guns are cycling too fast for missiles. Jamming spikes are nearly gone. "What about the station itself?" Elias asked. "Power feeds, maintenance channels, anything exposed since the ring arm broke?" Mara worked her console hard and suddenly leaned forward. "Captain, there. The destroyed rotation arm sheared open a service trunk. It links power from the outer ring to the core. Shields it is narrow and unstable. But if it overloads, the second and third shield layers will flicker." Aaron finished. "For how long?" Elias asked. Mara did quick calculations. 2 seconds, maybe 3 sometimes. That was more than enough on the human band. Chaos and courage mixed together. The independent ships from the next lane had arrived and were already joining the fight without formal orders or a clean command line. That was the human way, when the reason was simple enough. They are stealing from us. They are hurting our people. They think we will always bow. Captain Soji of the Ember Trace spoke on open comms. "Vorn, my ship still has breacher torpedoes from a mining contract. Ugly little things, but they bite into power trunks. Tell me where to put them." Mara pushed the target coordinates over burst link. Soji laughed. "Once. Ugly work is still work." The Ember Trace darted out from behind a wrecked customs spur and flew directly into a storm of fire that should have killed it twice. Its shields burned down to nothing. Its port engine blew apart. But it still got close enough. 2 breacher torpedoes struck the torn service trunk and buried themselves deep. Then they detonated. Light burst through the station ring like a bright crack racing along old bones. The payment core shields flickered. Mara shouted. Now Aaron fired a standard rail shot. The bitter light launched every drone it had. The Halcyon Gate hit with mining beams. 3 other human ships fired improvised missiles made for cutting rock, not armored hubs. Under normal conditions, none of that would have been enough. Under 2 seconds of weakness, it became history. The second shield died. The third tried to form again, and half formed and then failed under the flood of impacts. The payment core was exposed. The lawful measure opened fire on the resolute Dawn. At the same moment, the bridge vanished in white alarm light. As the stern took a savage hit, Aaron was thrown to the floor. Mara slammed against her harness. Lena fought the controls with both hands and a curse between her teeth. Engine section breached. Internal fire main shield. Gone, Captain. We cannot take another hit, Mara cried. Elias pulled himself back upright and fixed his eyes on the exposed core. One last push, the core took another human missile and split open along a seam no one had ever expected civilians to reach. Then a salvage drone from the bitter light flew straight into the gap and exploded inside. The payment core burst. It did not erupt like a bomb at first. It folded in on itself with a strange silent flash, and then a massive wave of broken light rolled out from the station hub screens, flickered target locks, vanished dozens of Phi drones, went dark at once. And throughout the sector, something far bigger happened. Every linked transit meter, every Phi ledger, Every enforced route code tied to that regional core lost sync. The system had been cut open. The human band went wild with shouting disbelief and laughter and raw relief. They did it. The core is down. They actually did it. Mara stared at her. Console Captain Fee control signals across the route are gone. Stations in 3 linked lanes just dropped into error states. Elias let out one slow breath. Good. But the battle was not over. The lawful measure was still alive and still deadly, and now it was furious beyond caution. Its commander ignored damaged sensors and drove the destroyer straight to the debris field, hunting the Resolute Dawn. Personally, new Alliance ships were also arriving on long-range scopes. More cutters, 2 frigates. Maybe a carrier group if the surge continued. The humans had broken the hand on their throat. Now the arm attached to it was reaching to strike. We need to pull back and scatter. Mara said we won the point. If we stay, they will crush us. She was right tactically, but Elias looked at the bridge crew and knew something else was needed. The payment core was a blow. What came next had to be a message. Open all channels sector-wide, he said. Mara hesitated only a second. This time, the signal reached farther because the shattered station relay still had enough power to act like an amplifier for anyone bold enough to seize it. Captain Elias Vorn of the Resolute Dawn spoke into that opening while battle fire flashed beyond the glass to every human ship and colony. Hearing this, the Phi Corps at Varos is destroyed. You have all paid under threat for too long today. That threat was answered. If they call this piracy, remember who fired first. If they call this chaos, remember who built profit on our hunger. If they come to force your heads down again, remember this sight. They can be hit. They can be broken, and they are fewer than they want us to believe. His words spread outward faster than any missile. To dock workers, to colony mayors, to convoy crews, to people who had never met him, and maybe never would. The lawful measure fired again. This time the shot passed so close along the Resolute Dawn's side that part of the hull glowed red. Lina shouted, "We have 1 engine bank left, and half a rudder. Thruster, say goodbye to pretty flying." Elias turned to the human band. All ships break in. Independent vectors do not die, proving courage live and spread the story. Help the damaged, carry the wounded. This route belongs to no tyrant now. Captain Soji answered first, voice ragged but full of fierce joy. Understood, Vorn. And for what it is worth, I never liked paying those bastards. Laughter burst through the channel again, even under fire. Humans were strange that way. Give them a moment between death and duty, and they would still find room to laugh. Mara's sensors flashed. Captain, multiple human colony defense signals just appeared. Small craft mostly, but they are coming. They heard you. Elias allowed himself the first real smile of the day. Then let us give them something worth arriving to. The lawful measure charged for a finishing strike. It wanted the symbol dead. It wanted Captain Vorn burning on every screen as a warning instead. The human ships around the field did something no Alliance commander had expected. They turned back ships that should have run, ships already damaged, ships carrying wounded and barely holding air. They still turned back. The Iron Faith rammed one of the destroyer's escort cutters. The Ember Trace limped across its sensor line. The bitter light dumped all remaining drones directly into its path. Even unarmed haulers released cargo crates and decoys to clutter the field, not because they believed they could destroy the lawful measure, but because one captain had shown them a truth, and now they refused to let that truth be erased. Mara looked at the display in awe. They came back for us. Elias's voice softened. No, they came back for themselves. The destroyer plowed through the clutter, but its firing solution kept breaking. Seconds passed. More human reinforcements entered the edge of the field. Then more. The Alliance had lost the clean terror it relied on. And once terror became uncertain, its rule did too. Captain Aaron said quietly from his damaged console, "What do we do now?" Elias watched the route burn and widen with new possibilities. "Now," he said, "we survived long enough for the galaxy to understand what changed. Today, survival turned out to be harder than rebellion." The first wild joy after the payment core exploded faded quickly as the Alliance response tightened across the sector. B systems had failed, route locks had dropped, but the Alliance still had fleets, and fleets did not vanish just because a symbol had been broken within 12 hours. The name Elias Vorn was on every official alert channel. Human pirate leader, transit terrorist, instigator of unlawful uprising. The labels changed depending on which Alliance world was speaking, but the goal stayed the same: make people fear him more than they feared the system he challenged. The problem for the Alliance was simple. Too many humans had seen the battle with their own eyes. Too many had watched a patched cargo ship wound a station. Too many had heard an alien controller threaten colonies. Too many had heard the station call civilians rebels. Before the civilians had even fired, you could hide one truth. You could not hide 10,000 witnesses. The Resolute Dawn limped into a dust cloud safe point beyond the Varos lane with hull breaches patched by foam sheets and engine lines held together by emergency clamps inside the ship. The mood was tired but fierce. Medical teams moved between bunks. Engineers slept where they fell. Mara had dark rings under her eyes and still refused to leave her console status, Elias asked as he entered the bridge again after 3 hours of forced rest. Mara rubbed her face. Worse and better. Alliance fleets are moving to lock down major lanes, but human port unions in 4 systems have announced payment refusal. Several colony councils are calling for a shipping strike. And this, she said. Pushing a feed to the screen, you should see a recording appeared. It showed workers on a loading dock watching the battle replay from Varos on a hanging screen. When the payment core exploded, the workers cheered so loudly the camera shook. Another clip followed. Then another. Merchant crews, farm colonies, repair docks. Whole groups of ordinary humans reacting not with fear but with anger, relief, and something stronger than both belief. Elias watched in silence. Aaron came onto the bridge carrying a metal cup of bitter coffee and handed it to him. You started a fire, Captain. Elias took the cup, but did not drink yet. I showed them the dry wood. They lit it themselves. Mara shifted to a tactical map. There is more. Human captains are asking for direction, not a government order. Just direction. They do not trust the old councils to act fast enough. Elias stared at the map. Shipping nodes, fuel points, aid routes, choke lanes. He had spent half his life learning them because cargo captains survived by knowing where profit and hunger crossed paths. The Alliance assumed power flowed from battleships down. Humans knew power also flowed from food, medicine, spare parts, and people willing to move them. They cannot occupy every route, he said. Mara nodded. Not if enough people resist at once. Then that is the fight, Elias said. Not ship against ship everywhere. Route against route. Move human aid through free lanes. Escort what must be escorted, deny them fees, and deny them calm. Make enforcement cost more than theft pays. Aaron gave a crooked grin. Weaponize logistics. Elias finally drank the coffee. That is all they ever did to us. Messages kept coming. Some asked for rally points. Some offered fuel or safe docks. Some simply said thank you. One message came from a small colony on the edge of famine because of the route collapse. A convoy that had been held for 4 days passed through and arrived with antibiotics that morning. 3 children lived who may not have lived otherwise. Mara read that message twice and then turned her face away for a moment. That alone would have been enough reason to keep fighting. But the Alliance moved quickly too. By the 2nd day after Varos, they made their true plan clear. If direct fees were failing, they would replace them with armed seizures. Convoys entering disputed lanes were stopped and boarded. Human cargo was marked for inspection delays. Captains who had supported Elias were flagged and hunted. It was the same control, wearing a harsher mask. Captain Soji of the Ember Trace arrived at the safe point with 1 engine dead and paint scorched black along half his ship. He came aboard the Resolute Dawn in person, bringing 2 other captains and a crate of contraband reactor cells. As a gift, he was shorter than Elias expected and laughed too often for a man who had nearly died. You look worse up close, Soji told him cheerfully. That means you are probably real. We are all real enough, Elias answered. They met in the old cargo mess because the ship had no grand war room. Around the table sat freighter captains, tug masters, mechanics, a union rep from a port moon, and 1 former naval analyst who now hauled water because official service had taught him too much about official lies. They built a plan out of need, not glorious fleet war, not speeches and banners alone. Convoy webs, shared repair codes, hidden fuel caches, public proof channels. Civilian escorts paired with fast strike ships assembled from minor salvagers and ex-security craft. The analyst pointed to the central map. The Alliance thinks the next battle will be about pride. They will defend major stations and chase famous names hit their custom satellites. Instead, free the small lanes, show ordinary people that resistance means supply, not just slogans. Soji slapped the table. Yes, make freedom practical. That became the shape of it. Over the next weeks, human resistance spread through trade. More than battle. One convoy broke a medical blockade near Tarsus. Another slipped food through a locked corridor by towing the cargo behind ore barges that looked empty. Unscanned dock workers sabotaged fee scanners from inside. Ship crews broadcast every illegal seizure on public net channels before Alliance sensors could bury it. Of course, there was fighting too hard. Fighting the Alliance was still stronger. Indirect force ships burned. Friends died. Some lanes were lost. But every time the Alliance made an example of a human convoy, 3 more convoys rose somewhere else. Captain Elias became less a man in the news and more a sign ordinary people used to recognize one another. Pay no tyrant, hold the lane. Remember Varos. Eventually, the Alliance understood that small punishments would not restore control, so they prepared a large one. The battle would happen at Helix Gate, the largest active trade node within 6 sectors and the symbol of Alliance route authority. After Varos, if they held Helix Gate, they could choke dozens of human colonies back into submission. If humans took or broke it, the old system might never recover. Mara studied the incoming reports for hours, then brought them to Elias in the quiet. Before shift change, they are concentrating 3 destroyers, carrier support, boarding frigates, and mobile fee barges to restart controlled passage under military guard. Aaron whistled low. They want to rebuild the chain in public. Yes, Mara said, and hang us from it. Elias stood over the map of Helix Gate. It was enormous, bigger than Varos, and built like a layered wheel around a slip corridor where ships from multiple sectors converged. Too strong for a straight civilian assault, too important to ignore. Soji leaned over the display when he joined them. Tell me you have one of those ugly smart plans, Captain, because I do not fancy charging 3 destroyers with mining torpedoes again. Elias stared at the gate for a long time. The Alliance believed order came from the center. Break the center, and the edges would scatter. Humans often did the reverse, stir the edges until the center lost balance. He looked up. We do not take Helix Gate by force. We make it impossible for them to use it. Morale understood first, the fee barges. Yes, and the route control beacons and the maintenance rings. And the civilian traffic algorithms. We jam. We overload. We blind. We clutter. Then when they commit to clearing one problem, we hit another. Make the gate useless. Make command impossible. Make every human ship in range part of the battlefield. Soji grinned slowly. That is not a fleet action. No, Elias said, it is a workers' revolt in space. The room went quiet because everyone knew that might actually work. The date was set. Convoys changed course. Crews loaded whatever weapons they had. Dock workers prepared strikes. Time to the gate action. Public channels readied live feeds. Helix Gate would not just be a battle. It would be a declaration. The night before departure, Mara found Elias alone on the bridge, watching stars drift beyond the cracked front glass. Are you afraid? She asked. Yes, he said at once. That surprised her. Of dying, some of failing more. She stood beside him. You already changed everything. He shook his head slightly. Not enough. Not until no child loses medicine because someone in a clean tower found a new way to price their life. Mara looked at him, then out at the stars. Tomorrow, then tomorrow, he agreed, and in the darkness around Helix Gate, fleets and freighters, workers and warships moved toward one another, carrying the weight of everything that would follow. Helix Gate shone like a false sun in the middle of the corridor. Its vast rings were bright with controlled traffic lights and defensive grids and long polished docking arms built to make travelers feel small before they ever passed through. For years, it had been the heart of Alliance root power. In the outer sectors today, it would either remain a chain or become a wound. Captain Elias Vorn stood on the bridge of the Resolute Dawn as hundreds of signals filled the tactical screens. Not a human fleet in the formal sense. Nothing so neat. They had our haulers, repair skiffs, escort cutters, old security corvettes, Union tow rigs, salvage drones, smuggler craft with false IDs half peeled away, and civilian freighters carrying relief cargo behind improvised armor plates. It was messy, loud, unbalanced, and very human. Mara breathed out slowly at her console. All groups reporting in. Dock strikes began on schedule. In the rear ports, public feeds, live in 17 systems. Alliance command channels are encrypted tight, but we can see panic in their traffic shape. Good. Elias said. Around Helix Gate, the Alliance had formed clean defense layers, destroyers at range, frigates near the ring, fighter screens around the phi barges and beacon clusters. They expected a charge. They expected human anger to be brave and foolish. They did not understand that hunger taught strategy better than pride. Elias opened the human band one last time before the fight. Every ship here knows its task. Do not chase glory to the work-free lanes where you can break what controls people. Carry the wounded when you must. If you lose contact, keep moving and keep thinking. They are stronger in command. We are stronger in adaptation. Captain Soji came back first, voice amused and ready. That is the least inspiring speech I have ever loved. Small laughter rolled across the band. It helped. Then Helix Gate broadcast its own warning. In a cold official tone, unauthorized human vessels are ordered to withdraw. This gate is under temporary emergency transit authority. Any interference will be treated as armed insurrection. Temporary, Soji muttered. They really do love that word. Elias raised one hand. Phase 1. Begin the battle started, not with gunfire but with traffic. Dozens of empty cargo frames released by human tugs drifted into approach lanes broadcasting false distress codes. Or barges dumped reflective scrap in sensor arc smuggler craft flooded the gate with contradictory civilian IDs. Maintenance workers inside the outer ring triggered perfectly timed service faults in docking clamps and airlock grids. Within minutes, the neat lines of Alliance traffic control turned into a knotted mess. One destroyer shifted to clear a lane and blocked a fighter launch arc. A phi barge lost signal priority and drifted. 2 frigates nearly collided while responding to false emergency pings. Then the first human strike teams moved. Small, fast ships hit beacon clusters along the outer corridor with shaped charges and jamming packs, not trying to destroy the whole gate, trying to make order fail. In 50 places at once, Mara's eyes moved across streams of data. They are splitting attention. Good, very good. They cannot decide what matters most. That was the point. Alliance rule depended on smooth systems. Human resistance only needed rough openings. The first real gunfire came when a boarding frigate cornered a relief convoy near the South Ring before it could latch on. 2 Union tow rigs smashed into its flank with engine power at full burn. The frigate rolled wide and 3 escort cutters hit its sensor mast. Live public feeds carried the clip everywhere within minutes. Not polished heroes, in matching armor, workers in ugly ships defending medicine. The image spread like fire. Helix Gate Command tried to shut down local broadcast towers. Dock workers inside the station. Open them wider. Phase 2, Elias ordered. The Resolute Dawn and a cluster of strike ships drove straight toward the phi barge line, protected near the inner ring. This was the visible throat of the old system mobile platforms, ready to restart charged transit under military escort. If they stayed alive, the Alliance could claim continuity, could say the order never truly broke. Not today. The lawful measure was there. Too repaired but scarred from Veros, its commander had chosen this fight personally. The destroyer turned toward the Resolute Dawn at once, like an old enemy, finding the face it hated most. Myra's jaw tightened. It remembers us good, Elias said. Let it. The destroyer fired and space lit white. Lena threw the Resolute Dawn down through a corridor between cargo shells and broken beacons, while Soji's ember trace cut high and dumped decoys like sparks from a grinder. One phi barge tried to lock passage rights across the lane. A human hacker team already inside its maintenance net reversed its authorization loop and opened every restricted channel at once. Civilian ships surged through the gap. Chaos widened. Aaron grinned at his console like a wolf. Black Iron is ugly, but she still bites. Hidden missiles struck the nearest phi barge and knocked out its drive ring. Then salvage drones latched onto its broadcast mast and overloaded the core. The barge went dark. Another barge tried to retreat behind a frigate screen. Miners from the Tarsus convoy cut it open with industrial lasers, not because they were designed for war, but because they were designed to chew stone and metal until nothing stood in the way. The Alliance line began to bend. Then the lawful measure broke through the clutter and came straight for the Resolute Dawn. Everyone on the bridge felt it. This was the moment that could end them. Captain Mara said, "Its forward batteries are locked. We cannot outrun this one." Elias watched the destroyer close and saw one chance. The Helix Gate maintenance ring rotated behind it on a slow time cycle, heavy with service arms, fuel conduits, and repair traffic. A clean commander would never fly through such a field at combat speed. The lawful measure commander wanted Elias dead too badly to stay clean. "Helm hold course, 3 more seconds," Elias said. Lena stared at him, then understood and smiled. with pure, reckless trust. 3 seconds, it is the destroyer, fired the resolute Dawn, rolled under the main beam so close that heat washed across the bow. Then Lena cut thrust and dropped the ship through a gap in the maintenance ring at the last possible instant. The lawful measure followed too fast, too angry. Its lower armor clipped a rotating service arm, then a fuel conduit, then a repair cradle full of compressed tanks. The explosion did not destroy the warship, but it ripped open its port weapons bank and sent it spinning into the outer edge of the ring. Soji shouted over comms with delighted shock, "You made the brute punch itself human strike." Ships pounced at once, not elegant, not disciplined, effective. They hit exposed engine vents and sensor scars from Varos. The lawful measure fired back wildly and took one cutter with it. But the spin kept worsening. Finally, a final missile from the bitter light plunged into its broken flank, and the destroyer went dark. A scream of triumph spread across every human channel. Mara had tears in her eyes and did not seem to notice the lawful measure is dead. But Helix Gate still fought. Alliance commanders pulled remaining ships tight around the central root control tower, trying to preserve one unquestioned point of authority. The tower coordinated civilian passage, waiting, docking priority, and enforcement response across the node. In other words, it was the brain of the gate. Elias looked at it and knew how this ended all. Ship's new priority, he called control tower. Do not let them rebuild. Command the final push with savage frigates rammed. Cutters burned, human haulers took hits meant for relief ships. Dock workers opened internal blast doors at the exact right seconds to create vulnerabilities that outside gunners could exploit. The tower shields held longer than anyone liked. Then a colony tug named Winter Grain, carrying no proper weapons at all, broadcast a simple message for the children who waited and rammed its entire mass into the lower shield emitter. The shield failed. For one heartbeat, everyone saw the tower naked in space. Every human ship fired lasers, rail shots, mining beams, missiles, salvage charges, things built for war and things built for labor. All of it hit together. The control tower broke apart in a storm of light and falling metal. Helix Gate lost command, not partially, completely. Traffic systems unlocked, enforcement channels split, docking arms froze, phi nodes crashed. Alliance formations dissolved into isolated groups trying to save themselves instead of the old order. Mara stared at the screen in stunned silence. "We did it," she whispered. No one answered for a second because the scale of it was too large. Then cheers filled the ship, then other ships, then feeds from across. Human space workers on docks. Embraced colony squares erupted. Convoys changed course through once forbidden lanes. The Alliance still existed. Its fleets still existed. The struggle would not end in one day, but the old certainty was dead. Captain Elias Vorn stood on the broken bridge of his wounded cargo ship and watched Helix Gate burn open into freedom. Soji came onto the channel laughing like a man who had bet his life and somehow won. "Well, Captain, you changed everything after all." Elias looked at the many human signals now moving through the gate, not as subjects asking permission, but as people choosing their own route. He answered quietly, "No, they changed it. I only went first." And that became the story told across the stars. Not of a perfect hero, not of a mighty fleet, but of one human captain who finally refused to pay for his own chains. And when he struck back, others remembered who they were. From that day onward, whenever any power tried to squeeze human ships with hunger, fear, or false law, someone, somewhere would say the same words. "Remember, Barrows, remember Helix. Make them pay," and the stars would answer with moving engines and open lanes.